Hey there, guys. This is Peng. It's 2025, so that means it's time for a new viability ranking. Now, unfortunately, I've actually not been asked to give my viability ranking for Black and White OU this year, and the reason for that is just straight and simple discrimination by the Black and White moderation team. So what I've decided to do in Rebellion instead is to do a tier list of all the obtainable Pokemon from Pokemon Colosseum. So this is a game I've been playing quite a lot recently, and I really enjoy. For those unfamiliar, I imagine most people watching this now will switch off if they don't know Pokemon Colosseum. So I imagine if you're still watching, you know what this is. But it's a Gen 3 Pokemon game on GameCube where there's no wild Pokemon. Instead, you entirely are limited to basically stealing a select number of Pokemon from specific opponents throughout the course of like a 12-hour story playthrough. And the available ones that you get are here. So there's like 40 or so. As you can see, a lot of them are like really, really fucking bad. It's actually like a really bad list of Pokemon you can get obtainable. And the reason it's so bad is because almost the entire point of the game is the fact that between Gen 2 and Gen 3, you couldn't transfer across Pokemon. So Gen 3 ended up being like a reset of the Pokedex, basically. And there were only like 200 Pokemon available in Ruby and Sapphire. And a lot of Gen 2 was missing. So they needed a way for people on Ruby and Sapphire to be able to get Gen 2 Pokemon. And this was before, before Fire Red Leaf Green and before Emerald came out. So this was a way basically for people to be able to get like the Gen 2 starters, for example, is through Colosseum. And that's basically the entire point of all the mons here being so absolute dog shit because Gen 2 Pokemon tend to be really, really bad. So I'm going to basically list all the Pokemon you can get in this game and kind of how good they are for a Colosseum playthrough, based on my experience. I'm not like a hardcore Nuzlocke, I just play the game casually. And so I kind of rank them based on kind of how useful they tend to be and so on. So it's double battle format for the entire game, and this makes some Pokemon that would otherwise be like really, really good makes them really bad, because stuff like Earthquake spam is really common. And likewise, it makes some things that are otherwise useless, things like, like Misdreavus or Furret, it actually gives them some kind of niche in this game. So without further ado, let's get started. So you start the game with Espeon and Umbreon, if I can move them, there we go. Espeon and Umbreon. Espeon is by far the best Pokemon in the game. It's really fast, it's really strong. It comes with Reflect, which is good for doubles to help support your partner. And you can later get the Light Screen TM. It comes with Helping Hand, which is, doubles in Gen 3 is in kind of quite a primitive state. You're kind of limited to like, in terms of like double synergy, you've got Follow Me, you've got Helping Hand, you've got Screens, you have Sunny Day and Rain Dance strategies to help partners. You've got Psych Up, like side Psych Up on your own partner to like capture your own boosts. And then you have like spread moves like Earthquake and Surf and stuff, and that's kind of the limit to what double strategy is in Gen 3. So the fact that Espeon actually has some moves that dial into that makes it a lot better than like most of the Pokemon in the game already. But really, it's here purely just for power, and just being way stronger than everything else, pretty much. Umbreon's not quite as good. Umbreon's a tip low, and the reason for this just being it's quite passive, but not passive in terms of it gets like really good support moves that helps its partners. It doesn't get Helping Hand and stuff. Passive in the way that after a certain point in the game, the best thing it does is click Toxic and Protect, and then you just switch around and intimidate things and just wait for things to die, and that's a viable way to play, but like Umbreon's not doing anything very direct, and that means it's quite limited in what it can do. It's quite weak. I mean, like Bite is special in this game, and that's kind of its best special move. That's its best stab for like a massive portion of the game. That can be a benefit. So a lot of the Pokemon that you can catch, if you don't catch them at like the first opportunity, you may need to wait like 6 hours until you can get them again. So if you accidentally knock them out, then you're kind of stuffed. So actually having some Pokemon that are quite weak, like Umbreon, can be beneficial in the same way that having Pokemon that have like status moves is beneficial. In the same way that like you try to catch, I don't know, wild Pokemon in a normal game, only this time like you actually have to catch them on the first go. So having stuff like guaranteed does small amounts of chip can be useful, but in terms of like overall gameplay, like Umbreon is nowhere near as useful as Espeon, so kind of like rank them like this. The first shadow that you get is Makuhita, and there's real growing pains with Makuhita at the start. So Makuhita is actually really frail, but if you persevere with it, it's decent. It comes with 2 decent fighting stabs, which are Cross Drop, which is high power, critical hit ratio but inaccurate, and Vital Throw when you just need to guaranteed hit for less damage. When it evolves, it's honestly fine. It has 2 abilities, either gets Guts or Thick Fat. You can kind of cheese Guts a little bit, in that you can like deliberately let Hariyama get burnt or paralyzed or something to give it that 50% boost. If you do this, it makes playing the game really slow, because it means that you're never going to use like Pokemon centers, and you're always just going to heal by, like moving Pokemon in and out of PC boxes, so you don't end up accidentally healing the Hariyama as well, which I personally never have the patience for, so I never really do that. But if you are willing to play the game that way, then like Guts Hariyama is probably like broken, but I never really do that. The other ability is Thick Fat, which is fine. There's quite a lot of fire types in the game, but very little ice coverage, which is like a common theme that we'll come to later. Pokemon that tend to get ice moves tend to be decent. But yeah, otherwise Hariyama's like good, but not amazing. The first major selection headache that you get in the game is which of the 3 Gen 2 starters you want to have. Weirdly, it's not really presented to you as much of a choice for those of you who are for some reason watching this having never played Colosseum. There's a point in the game where there's 3 exits to a town, and at each exit there's a different like bad guy who has, one has Bayleaf, one has Quilava, one has Croconaw, and you can steal one of them. But you will see the guy that has Bayleaf like way before you see the other 2, so most people just go and challenge them straight away, I think, at least when you're a kid. And when I was growing up, I didn't even know you could get these 2 until like way later. I just always got Bayleaf, Meganium. But if you know you have the choice, then there's better options than the Meganium. Basically, I think the way this ends up looking is something like this. So I would say something like this is probably, I think these 2 are really close, like almost impossible to separate in terms of Typhlosion and Feraligatr. I think Meganium's a bit worse, and the reason for that is Meganium falls into the same sort of trap as Umbreon, in that if you're willing to play the game just by toxicing things and clicking Protect, and like that's how you intend to play the game, then by all means go and do it. But Meganium has like basically no power and no decent support that isn't already done better by something else. So Meganium gets dual screens, but you'll likely be running screens on Espeon a lot of the time anyway, so, and like you're never dropping Espeon, so there's not a huge amount of reason to have screens Meganium. It does it get Leech Seed? Actually, I can't remember. But yeah, it's just not fantastic for that reason. The other thing as well is when you purify these 2, so basically the way you purify Pokemon is you catch them as Shadow Pokemon, and they've only got one move when you first catch them, which is Shadow Rush. And as you gradually purify them back to being normal again, they relearn their moves. In the process of doing so, Quilava gets Sunny Day, and Feraligatr gets Rain Dance. And like I mentioned, these kind of strategies are like as deep as you can really get in terms of double strategies in Gen 3. And so the fact they get them for free at like the early stages of the game means you can do more complicated stuff with these 2 than you can do with Meganium immediately. They're also just like more powerhouses. They're doing more stuff. So when people speedrun this game, they do it with Espeon Typhlosion every single time. It's like just by far the fastest way to go. Typhlosion hitting the things that Espeon can't is like really important. Whereas like Meganium, Meganium Espeon synergy is not fantastic in terms of hitting steals and stuff like that. So these two tend to be better. Feraligatr has Rain Dance Surf, which is really, really big. Surf actually gets quite a big nerf in Double Ultra Gen 5. So the way that it works is attacks that hit all of the opponents stay 100% power. So things like Earthquake are like broken. But if they only hit the 2 opponents, it's reduced to 50%. So Surf does like half the damage it normally would. That's different to like modern gens where spread moves are 75% across the board. So Surf here is quite weak, but this can be Rain Dance and Torrent boosted, which makes it more viable. So yeah, that's kind of how I'd rank the 3 starters, probably in that way. But again, you could put these in either order. Magcargo starts us off on the big list of Gen 2 Pokemon that are completely dog shit. So you get a Slugma. Slugma's really bad. I think if you were willing to go the whole way to making it a Magcargo, you'd potentially be okay. I think Magcargo might learn Protect by level up, which is quite interesting because otherwise you have to wait until the mid game to get the Protect TM. So I mentioned now as well, TMs are in short supply in this game. Almost all of them you only get a single copy of, and you get them at like really weird points. Like in the early game, all you really get is like Toxic and Steel Wing, and nothing learns Steel Wing in the early part of the game except like Noctowl, so you just never use Steel Wing. And then Toxic, there's like a big competition for you want to put it on, and most people put on Umbreon or something. So yeah, the fact that like something gets Protect quite early can be useful, but it doesn't help the fact that like Magcargo is still 4 times weak to both Water and Ground in a game where the opponent is just spamming spread moves quite a lot. It makes Magcargo really hard to use. It's already an issue for like Typhlosion, but like Magcargo is doubly weak to both those things in terms of Earthquake and Surf, so that's really dire for Magcargo, and I would basically never use it unless I was deliberately trying to use the worst shit possible. Noctowl's in this B tier, and I would call the B tier here like situationally okay. So I think S tier is Espeon tier. S is you cannot go wrong using these things. Like they'll always you will win the game if you use Espeon and any 5 S tier Pokemon. The game's done. A tier is things like Plug and Gaps if you want to be like a bit different, and not just use like the literally most bread and butter team in the game. B is things that are like situationally useful, or you use them for like a brief part of the game and then drop them again as soon as something better comes along. And Noctowl fits into this because there's not many flying types early in the game, and there's an opponent at about the 25% mark called Mirabee who has 4 Ludicolo's, and you are unlikely to have anything that hits those Ludicolo's super effectively on your team except for Fly Noctowl. It's probably the only thing. Now Noctowl is so weak that there's a good chance that your Espeon does more damage than Noctowl does anyway, even super effectively. But regardless, having a Grass Resist and a Flying Stab in one slot for Mirabee is useful. I think past that fight, you're basically not using Noctowl. But it's fine temporarily. It gets Hypnosis, and Sleep moves are in short supply. Jump Up is one of the only ones that really gets it. It gets Hypnosis, which is good for catching Shadow Pokemon. Noctowl's is overall quite mediocre, and B rank is kind of where it slots. Ampharos is one of the best attackers in the game. You don't really get many good other electric type options for a lot of the game, and Ampharos is actually comparatively quite strong to the rest of the game. You get it as a Flaffy, and when you purify it has Thunder Wave, which is really, really good in-game to help support some of your slower partners. Things like Typhlosion and Feraligatr aren't like super, super fast, and also helps you catch shadows as well by paralyzing them. Ampharos is generally really, really good. Once you get the Thunder TM, you've got that obvious synergy of Rain Dance for Alligator with Thunder Amphros if you did that. So yeah, Amphros is just really, really solid. Definitely the best option you can pick. Jump Love, I know people are really mixed on. I've watched a couple of other VR videos for Colosseum before, and some people put like Jump Love in like C tier, and then some people put it like S tier. My ranking on it is basically based on, I think support-wise, especially if you're running Sunny Day, so if you've got Typhlosion, Jump Love is one of the best Pokemon in the game. And the reason for that is that it gets Chlorophyll and it gets Sleep Powder. And if you're willing to grind the first Colosseum, you can get Solar Beam really early in the game. And that makes Jumpluff incredibly strong. It'll move first, it'll sleep things in doubles with no Sleep Claws, which is ridiculous, and it makes a lot of the fights like just an absolute cakewalk. You can also self Sunny Day if you want to get the TM for that. Again, it takes some grinding to get that as well, but it can do that. I think Jump Love is just really, really strong, and I use it a lot. It's probably like the best way to almost guarantee catch shadows in the game too, just by sleeping them and then spamming Ultra Balls. So yeah, it's really, really strong. I like it a lot. I forget if it gets Encore. I've never used it if it has, but if it gets it, you probably should use that too. Quagsire is really decent. Water Ground is just great. Defensive typing. I think it's split between either getting Water Absorb or Damp, and obviously if it gets Water Absorb, that is incredible. Damp is situationally useful. There are a couple of opponents, I think, in Mount Battle that do like turn 1 double explosion with like Geodudes and Gravelers and stuff, and if you've not got any Protect users, or you've not got like the one Ghost type in the game, that can be quite annoying. But like generally you want Water Absorb on this, and if you get Water Absorb, this guy is a powerhouse for a lot of the game. Ground types are in short supply, and there's a part of the game where the opponent just likes to set up Rain Dance to start spamming Thunder, and obviously being like a Water Absorb ground type, Quagsire like hard counters that entire part of the game. So Quagsire's a really good pickup if you can get it. Misdreavus is quite weird, so it's actually really weak, and because Ghost types are physical in this game, yeah, it's like its Shadow Ball doesn't do a lot, except like very, very physically frail Psychic types, things like, you know, Kadabra and stuff like that. Like it's not really killing anything else. But where Misdreavus is decent is firstly being an Earthquake community. So once you pick up the Earthquake TM, which of note there's only one of, there's a really big headache of what to give Earthquake to and how to protect your own team from Earthquake, because like I said, it's max power against your teammates, so you have to kind of have a strategy for that. So having a Levitate Pokemon on your team is really, really good and helps like pair. It lets you fit Earthquake on your team more easily, which is the first thing. And the second thing is that the opposing AI is really bad at playing against Ghosts. So they will choke into Misdreavus all the time. They will routinely click normal and fighting type moves into this guy and just waste turns all the time. So on Choose Potential alone, Misdreavus makes it into A tier. It's limited in its frail and weak and doesn't get amazing moves, but like against normal types, your opponent will just body slam this thing over and over, and that lets you like auto win games with the partner. So Misdreavus it's actually really quite decent. Furret is interesting because it's the only redirect user in the game. It gets Follow Me and it gets it like immediately, I think. There's not a ton of setup to pair that with, which is kind of annoying. Like you don't really get like anything good that gets like Sword Stance or anything like that. At least not till like way too late in the game for Furret to have like outlast its usefulness. And also like Furret getting Follow Me is kind of mid when it has no resistances. You know, it's not like Rage Powder Amoonguss and doubles or something. Like it's a normal, it's a weak and frail normal type with a redirect move that probably just gets KO'd itself when it redirects, which it's not amazing. I put it B tier purely out of the uniqueness of having Follow Me, and also like for a brief period of time it is one of the strongest guys that you get. It comes at quite a high level, and it's stab normal without tons of resistances at that point in the game, so it is actually fine, but you're not taking this all the way to the final battle, let's just say that. Back to unviable Gen 2s. Yanma might be the worst Pokemon in the game. It's tight because there's so many really bad ones, but Yanma gets absolutely nothing. It gets like, I think Wing Attack is its strongest stab move, and that's base 55. It gets nothing else. It gets like no good TMs. It's absolutely unviable. You're never using this. Octillery's fine. Octillery's limited by the fact that you get Remoraid at a really low level compared to the other shadows in the game, so you're catching everything else about level 35 at this point, and the Remoraid's level 20, so you have to really baby it, like switch it in and out, or like EXP share and stuff. But then once you do, Octillery's one of the better waters, purely out of its move pool, right? You can get the Fire Blast TM. You can buy that as many times as you want in like the mid game, and water types that can hit grass types. It's pretty interesting. So Octillery's got like some cool stuff going for it. It gets Octazooka as well, and because water types are quite weird, because you never quite know if you want to have Surf or if you want to have like a strong single target water move. So something like Feraligatr, for example, doesn't get a good water move other than Surf for like a really long time. Whereas Octillery gets, and the next Pokemon actually, Octillery gets Octazooka, which is single target water, which can be like really, really strong. So yeah, it's interesting. It takes a lot of work to get it to do anything good, but it's good for it. It's okay. Mantine's in the same boat, but it's probably better. So Mantine's in the same boat in that it doesn't get Surf, but it gets Bubble Beam, and it then gets Water Pulse, I want to say. Which, being single target water moves, are going to be probably stronger than Surf is across 2 targets. Mantine's interesting. Mantine is good defensive profile, good bulk. Being an Earthquake immunity is good for your own team and partnering with Earthquake, but also countering opposing Earthquake users. Mantine is the best Pokemon in the game in the Juking fight, probably. Juking just uses loads of 4 times Water Weaks who spam Earthquake, and obviously Mantine's immune to Earthquake, and also one-hit KOs those with Bubble Beam. So it's really good for that brief portion of the game. I think there's, a bit like Quagsire, I think there's an ability headache here. I think if you get Swift Swim, this can be really strong in a team with like Feraligatr, Ampharos, and like the Raikou that you get later. But if you don't get Swift Swim, I forget what the alternative is. If you don't get Swift Swim, it's harder to justify and harder to keep in the team because it's just not strong or fast or does anything really interesting. But purely on the back of like soloing one of the hardest fights in the game, Mantine is up here. Quillfish, a bit like Mantine, has a Swift Swim ability headache. Its second ability is Poison Point, which is almost unviable, if only because if a Shadow Pokemon poisons itself, hitting your Quillfish, and all of them have contact moves because they all have Shadow Rush by default, then they're on a timer that could stop you catching them, so you don't ever really want to have Quillfish out against a Shadow, which makes you not really want to use Poison Point Quillfish. It also suffers from the fact that I think it gets Surf, but it's special, and all the water moves are special. So it's never really using water moves because its special stat is so bad. So it's kind of limited to this thing of like, if you get Swift Swim and you're willing to use it as like just a poison type physical attacker, it has merit. It does some cool stuff. Yeah, like if you get the Sludge Bomb TM, this guy is actually quite strong compared to the rest of the game. But like the fact it hasn't really got like many good backup options, and the fact that it's limited to that one ability means it's probably somewhere down here. It's probably like approximately Octillery, maybe a bit worse than Octillery. Like if it's Swift Swim, it's better. So let's put it here. Dunsparce is pretty bad. Let's not talk about it. Medicham is weird. Medicham is a mixed attacker in this game because it gets Calm Mind and Psychic moves, which can be quite good, maybe with something like Furret. But it also has like that physical side going on as well. The annoying thing is it's not guaranteed to get pure power, so it's only probably A tier based on if you get pure power or not. If it doesn't have that, it's like it's down here somewhere. You just probably never use it. The best thing about Medicham is that catching it, it has an equipped Twisted Spoon, which you just immediately give to Espeon. That's honestly the best thing about getting Medicham is you just get that item. But if you get the right ability, like Medicham is decent. Altoria's pretty good. Dragons are quite hard to come by, and dragons obviously have like a good defensive profile. It's got good stats as well. Its move pool's not amazing, so it gets Dragon Dance at a certain point, but it gets no physical moves to go with it. So it gets Dragon Breath and Dragon Claw, I think, but they're both special in this game. So you probably could build it as like a Dragon Dance and then use some of your TMs on it. Like, I think it gets Steel Wing. And it definitely gets Earthquake. But one of the issues with that is you only get one Earthquake TM, and there's generally something better when you want to use Earthquake on. But if you legitimately have nothing better to use Earthquake on, then maybe on this is fine. I think it's just okay. It's not like an obvious pick, but it is decent. Yeah, it's alright. Pseudo Widow is not good. It's better than Mad Cargo. It's probably better than Dunsparce. All it has going for it is it has Rock Head with Double Edge, which is really strong for that part of the game because Pseudo Widow is actually surprisingly strong. But again, it's an Earthquake and a Surf weak with like basically no upside compared to like Typhlosion or something, which is, you know, same weaknesses but actually really fucking strong and pretty fast and gets good support stuff like Sunny Day. Pseudo Widow just sucks, honestly. You just never really want to use it. Plusle is really difficult to rank because Plusle is not a shadow Pokemon. You get it at really low level, but it levels up quickly because it's traded. It's Juking's Plusle, so it gets that EXP bonus. It's really frail, but it gets like one of the best support move pools in the game. So by level up, it gets Fake Tears and Encore, which nothing else in the game gets, I don't think. And that immediately lets you do some absolutely bonkers stuff with like... First with Espeon, like if you Fake Tears Psybeam, there's nothing in the game takes that past the mid game. Sorry about that. Yeah, likewise, Fake Tears with spread moves like Surf is pretty strong, and then Encore, it's just generally good, really good in game. So unlike other cartridge Gen 3 games, where if you Encore something, the opponent will generally stay in and keep clicking it. When you Encore in Colosseum, the opponent will almost always switch out, and that makes that like really abusable as well. It's basically like a phasing move. So Plusle has a lot going for it. Not to mention, it's also pretty fast, so it can do fast Rain Dance to support some other stuff. And it gets Thunder too. It's like a moveset of like Rain Dance, Thunder, Encore, Fake Tears on a Rain team can be like really potent. So I think it probably fits around here somewhere. I think most people look at it and think it's absolutely garbage, and okay, it's not amazing, but it's doing stuff that nothing else in the game can really do. And support Pokemon in this game are underrated. Most people will just kind of build teams with like the big heavy hitters, but the game's a lot easier if you abuse things like Jump Off Sleep or Encore or Fake Tears and stuff like that. So yeah, Plusle I think it's pretty good. Hitmontop is next. So Hitmontop, I'm going to put Hitmontop top of A tier. Actually, no, I put it next to Hariyama. I think Hitmontop and Hariyama are quite similar. It kind of comes down to abilities. So Hitmontop gets Intimidate, which is really, really strong, obviously. Reduce the attack of both opponents, and you can kind of cycle that. So you can always just lead this and switch it out straight away. Doesn't get Fake Out like Hariyama. Well, neither get Fake Out. There's no Fake Out users in this pool of Pokemon, which is kind of annoying. But yeah, you basically use it for Intimidate and Physical Stab. It comes with Black Belt, which is good. And Triple Kick is like a decent fighting stab option. But the main reason you're using this is just for Intimidate. Yeah, which can really help with like a lot of the earthquake spam in the mid and late game. I think it's pretty close between this and Hariyama. They're really similar. They basically only get fighting moves in level up. So you maybe have like some weird TMs they can use, but you're basically kind of picking based on, I don't know, like, did you get the Intimidate Hitmontop, or did you get its other, what is that? Is Steadfast, its other ability or something? Either way. Yeah, it depends. It's kind of what ability. If you got Guts, Hariyama, maybe you persevere with that. If you got Intimidate, Hitmontop, you maybe go with that. If you got neither of those and you got the bad abilities, then maybe you just cry. I don't know. Okay, first boss in the game, Dew King, has Entei. Entei is really similar to Typhlosion. Actually, really similar moveset too. So when you purify both of them, they both have Sunny Day and a Fire Stab. In Entei's case, that's Fire Blast. In Typhlosion's, that's Flame Wheel. But you can get Fire Blast TM, like not too much later. So they're really similar. The big thing about legendary dogs in this game is that whilst they look really strong on the surface, and they basically don't have an ability because pressure is useless. And the second thing is, I think they actually have their base stat total nerfed compared to the main games. So they're not as ridiculously powerful as you would think they are. So what you're really comparing here is Entei versus Typhlosion. Typhlosion gets Blaze. Entei gets... Entei's got the better physical attack, which means it can do things like Earthquake better. Something I was using to success recently was Silk Scarf Hyper Beam, which you can't really do with Typhlosion because it's too weak. Entei in its shadow form, just by clicking Shadow Rush, which is a physical move, is also really, really good. I think that probably rounds it out. So they're really similar. You're probably unlikely to use both. In my current run through, I am using both because I'm like on a hard Sun team. But yeah, they're just really similar. Kind of depends. If you didn't get Typhlosion, Entei is automatic in the team. If you already have Typhlosion, maybe you just keep it. I don't know, but it's definitely good. S tier, high S tier. Yeah, very solid. Ledian, dog shit, gets no good moves, just bad. Suicune, kind of what Entei's to Typhlosion, Suicune is to Feraligatr. They're really similar. So Suicune also gets that Surf Rain Dance combo when you purify it. And then a bit later you can get Blizzard for it by TM, or it might also get Aurora Beam by level up. Either way, Suicune is just really solid. If you're not got Feraligatr, Suicune's probably going to go in the team, unless you're trying not to use the Legendaries, which is also fair. But yeah, this guy is just really solid. Really decent. Good Rain Dance enabler, a bit like Feraligatr. There's not much to say. I mean, like all of these top... let's say I took these guys out. After Espeon, these are the 3 best attackers in the game. And there's also a legendary dog that does basically the same thing as these 3 do as well. So it comes down to, like, if you really wanted to, you could just like replace these 3 with the dogs when you get them. It doesn't hugely matter. They're all really quite similar. Next is Gligar. I'm going to pair Gligar with Piloswine. And the reason for that is they come at roughly the same point of the game. You get them right at the end of the Under, and just before you go into the Pokemon Research Lab. And in that lab, you start running into loads of things like Magnemite and Magneton, which just start spamming Thunder at you. And if your team is mostly made up of these guys in the top half, you'll notice there are not a huge amount of electric resists that come in there. It's basically Ampharos, Plusle, and Quagsire, and Meganium, but you maybe don't have Meganium because you picked a better choice. Maybe Umbreon, like Umbreon's bulky enough to take Thunders, but those Magnetons can be like really annoying. So having like an actual good ground type at that point can be useful. The issue is that they both kind of suck, so you kind of want to give the Earthquake TM to them, but then if you give the Earthquake TM to them, it means you can't give them to something else later, so it's kind of like this weird spot. Gligar gets no good moves outside of TMs, so it literally is like an Earthquake bot if you give it the Earthquake TM. And then Piloswine gets Dig, which is good enough, but also like not incredible. And the scary thing about Dig in this game is that if you Dig and the opponent uses Earthquake, you are actually boned. So, yeah, like they are good for that very temporary part of the game where you need an electric immunity, and maybe you didn't have Quagsire, but beyond that, these guys are not very strong. Stantler is, I believe, a guaranteed Intimidate. I think it only gets Intimidate in this game, which is good for a lot of the same reason as Hitmontop is. The problem with it is it gets like, no good. It doesn't get good attacks basically. It gets some like interesting support moves. I think I've never really used it. I've always had Hitmontop at this stage. Normal type's just quite weird because they don't resist anything, and yeah, but Intimidate's like a broken ability, so it's probably like somewhere up here. He's pretty good. Sneasel's useless because Ice and Dark are both special in this game, and he has literally like base 40 special attack or something. His unique upside is he's the only Pokemon I get that gets Icy Wind in this selection. So you can do some support stuff with Icy Wind to slow down opponents, but it's so frail that you're just not going to do this, I don't think. Yeah, weirdly its best move is Shadow Rush when it's still a Shadow Pokemon, but beyond that it's really quite bad. Actually, it's just better than some of these. It's probably there. Ariados sucks. Ariados is a bit like Quillfish in that if you give it the Sludge Bomb TM, it's actually quite powerful, but it's a poison type, and this one doesn't get Swift Swim, so it's bad. Apom is really awful. Apom is really, really awful. In theory, it can do Agility Baton Pass, but so can Plusle, I think, so you're just never really going to use this. Murkrow is really bad too. I've never used it. Forretress is actually quite good. Forretress is limited by the fact that you get it quite late for it to get a spot into your team, but its big upside is that it gets Self-Destruct. So if you have Mischievous, that can be like a really strong turn 1 opening, because Explosion and Self-Destruct are 100% spread power moves in this game, so they can they can clear out quite a lot of stuff. So you can do these really broken strats where you just lead Forretress and a Ghost and just boom, and that's the only Pokemon that you can do that with. Aside from that, it can do like Toxic Protect stuff, so maybe you can replace Umbreon for this at some point, but I think there's only one Toxic TM in the game, so you'd have to not give it to Umbreon early. So that means you're ditching Umbreon really early in the game. So like, if the stars align, Forretress is like really, really good. But a lot of the issue with a lot of this stuff, the single-use TMs, is that these guys all don't really compete with each other for team slots, but like compete with the best Pokemon for like TM usage. It's like if you ever want to use like Earthquake Entei, for example, then Gligar's unviable, which ends up being really strange. But yeah. Ground Ball's in the same boat as Stantler. It's also a Intimidate user. It's pretty much identical in that sense. I think it's slightly stronger, but I've never really used either of them, to be honest. Vibrava's really good. I'm a big fan of Vibrava. So you get it at 43, and then there's an item in this game called a Time Flute, which are like single-use auto-purification without needing to go through the whole rigmarole of unlocking their heart and all that stuff. So I think Vibrava comes at a point in the game where it's a prime Time Flute recipient, and then just immediately give it 2 rare candies and get a Flygon. And I think this is the best Earthquake user in the game. And it comes at a point in the game where having an Earthquake community is really, really big, and Flygon is probably like the... I love Jumpluff, man. Let's put Flygon here. I think Flygon's really, really solid. It also gets like a really decent TM move pool, even beyond Earthquake. So it gets Dragon Breath by level up, which is probably its best dragon move, which is a bit sad. But through TM, it gets Solar Beam and Fire Blast, which for Sun teams is really, really potent. In addition to having like really good typing for those Sun teams too. So Flygon's like really, really good. Massive fan of Flygon. Raikou, side by side with Ampharos. Raikou is probably better, but you're getting it quite late in the game and have to purify it in like a very short time period for it to be useful. So maybe you could Time Flute it, but like you maybe have Ampharos already. I mean, yeah, it's got Rain Dance Thunder. It's doing the same sort of thing as Ampharos is doing. It's just really solid. It's also like a more offensive Plusle, I guess, because it's got the speed. But yeah, it's really a toss-up between this and Ampharos, generally. The fact it comes so late in the game means that maybe it's lower, but Yeah. Basically, if you're using Ampharos, you use Ampharos most of the game, and then when you catch Raikou, you may just switch, because it's Raikou. Sunflora, I'm going to put Sunflora down here. Sunflora is really, really bad, but unlike these other guys that do literally nothing, Sunflora has Chlorophyll and Solar Beam, so it can at least synergize well with like Sun strategies if you're not on Jump Bluff. But beyond that, Sunflora is truly diabolical. Delibird has no real niche. Heracross is going to go up here. No, Heracross is going to go down here, I think. So, the issue with all of these, with what we're getting into with these guys, is Heracross and Skarmory are getting to that point in the game where these are the last two encounters that you get before going into the final gauntlet of games. So these last Pokemon here, you get back to back to back to back to back without a chance to like heal and stuff, unless you deliberately like throw games. So if you catch Heracross and Skarmory, as good as they are, you have to literally just go grind for like half an hour before you go into the final battle, specifically just to use these two. And to me, that makes them like less engaging as picks. You know, that they're a bit like Deus Ex Machina. Like, I think Heracross is actually up here. Like, Heracross Espeon more like solo the final boss, but if a Pokemon's only good for the final boss, is it really up here? Like, I don't think so. Actually, in the same vein, like, Raikou's going to drop one. I'm going to put Raikou Below Ampharos, purely because you don't have it for most of the game, and same thing for this one. So yeah, I'll put Heracross and Skarmory here. They're both really, really strong. Skarmory does some cool metal sound stuff, so it can like support partners by reducing opponent's special defense, and also like a lot of the end game Pokemon just like really can't hit Skarmory, so it's like pretty decent. But like, it's so late in the game, you're just so unlikely to go and actually use these. Yeah, that's basically it for me. Right, and then finally, these guys are all in the final gauntlet, so you're unlikely to be catching these, deliberately losing, and then going back into the gauntlet again to use them against everything else. Like, in theory, Metagross is S tier if you were to catch Metagross, deliberately lose, trade Metagross up, and then go back and use it to catch Tyranitar. But no one's doing that, so Metagross just is too late to be useful. All of these are too late to be useful. Houndoom would be so much fun as like an early game encounter, but you don't get it. These guys are just, you never use them in a playthrough. And then these last ones are all either like e-reader exclusive, so you actually can't get them anymore, or they are post-game catches. So yeah, I think that finishes everything off. I think Espeon's really in a tier by itself. If you are not playing with Espeon, then you are really hamstringing yourself in a way that you aren't with anything else. Like, you can skip everything else in S tier, and the game will still be like really straightforward, I think. But like, going without Espeon does, it's so much better than everything else in the game that it's just such a clear S tier. You've then got like the best attackers in the game are the two best fire types, which are Entei, Typhlosion, the two best waters, which are Feraligatr, Suicune, and the two best electrics, which are Ampharos, Raikou. You've got Umbreon if you really want to commit to like a toxic stalling strategy, then Umbreon's decent. And also Umbreon later in the game gets Moonlight, which synergizes with like Sunny Day Typhlosion quite well. But overall it's just quite weak, and it's really quite passive. It's a support Pokemon, but not in a support in that it's not helping teammates. It's literally just staying on field and stalling, which is good for some opponents, but like it's just not the way I like to tackle in-game Pokemon generally. Jumpluff is the best sleep user in the game, which makes catching Shadows really, really good. Synergizes with Sunny Day really nice, and gets a really early Solar Beam if you do the first Colosseum, which is nice. Flygon is probably the latest Pokemon that you get that you really, really want to add to your team, because it's doing something different that nothing else is. It's the best recipient of the Earthquake TM, and it's also just got like amazing typing and TM options. And it comes yeah at the best time to like beat the rest of the game. It's one of the best options. Quagsire's really hard to remove, good typing, good spread moves, good ability with Water Absorb, hard counters the lab portion of the game, which is really strong. He's just decent. Meganium is the worst of the 3 starters, but still solid, because it's, you know, like a stage 3 starter, stage 2 starter. Sorry, no, stage 3. Yes, stage 3 starter. It's really solid. The 2 fighting types, very ability dependent. If you don't get Guts or you don't get Intimidate on the 2 of these, then they kind of suck. Mischievous, the opponent will choke against. Altara is a dragon in a game without many dragons. Plusle is a really unique support option, but very frail. Fortress is a boom bot to go with Mischievous, and of course a Toxic Protect. This guy's dependent on ability choice. These guys come really late, but if you're willing to put the work in, they kind of are broken in the end game. Mantine solos the hardest boss in the mid game, which is Juking. Noctowl is really good into Mirror B and his Ludicolos. These 2 are like secondary intimidators if you don't get hit on top, but they're kind of mid. Ferret's the only follow me user. Quillfish is good, assuming you get Swift Swim and are happy with just Poison Stab. Octillery's okay if you're willing to level up level 20 Remoraid. These 2, Gligar and Piloswine, are temporarily good as ground types into the lab section if you've not got Quagsire. Sunflora is like a very niche Sun abuser, and everything else you are never, ever, 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 ever going to use in a playthrough of Pokemon Colosseum. So, hope that clears it up. That's my 2025 VR. Fuck you, black and white mods. You can't cage me.